Hi everybody, Steve Griffiths here, developer of the MTPredictor software program. In today's video I'd like to look at what I call our MTPredictor Holy Grail trade setup. Great example unfolded on the ES and the YM yesterday, and this is where we have an initial correction where our ABC or TS1 or 3 trade setup unfolds, which in Elliott wave terms is actually a wave 2. Now why is this so good? Because after a wave 2 you tend to get a strong wave 3 kind of move, which is exactly what happened on the USD minis yesterday. So let's go through the steps which we use to identify these. First I'll note that these setups, because they're on the initial correction to a new move, they will usually be against our STF color. So these are what we call an advanced setup for our more experienced users. These are particularly good examples because we were actually looking at these as they were unfolding in real time in yesterday's training webinar. So today's video is not done with the benefit of hindsight, it's actually done looking at these setups that we did look at and talk about in our very own MTPredictor training webinar for MTPredictor customers. So these were actually talked about at the time as they were unfolding yesterday. Right, so what do we do? Well, as with all advanced analysis, we look to the higher time frame for our larger degree trend. So for this we go to our 15-minute chart, and what we do is look for prior pivots. So before the market even opened yesterday, here was a prior pivot high. We right mouse click, we put our decision point on. That gives us an area of higher time frame or larger degree support or resistance, in this case resistance. Now the ES opened above this, then snapped straight back down and went through that. So in other words, it found resistance at this level. If I go over to the YM, it was actually a slightly better or cleaner looking setup, because here's the 15-minute chart of the YM. Exactly the same pivot. We right mouse click, place the decision point on. That's our decision point level, and as you can see it was a little bit cleaner and clearer on the YM. But both of them were basically showing that resistance was coming in. So let's go back to the ES. So what does that mean now? Well, that's our resistance on our 15-minute chart. So now if we go back to our 3-minute chart, what that actually means in Elliott wave terms is, because we were having resistance come in here at a higher time frame, we would deem that as what we call important. In other words, it made an important high. So in Elliott wave terms, or my unique isolation approach to Elliott wave, it means that we can define this as the start point of a new Elliott wave sequence. This is why I developed the unique isolation approach to Elliott wave, because it allows you to identify these trade setups in isolation, in other words without the confusion of prior patterns or other stuff that Elliott wave user gets very confused with. So now we've defined this as a higher time frame or important high. The initial decline off that would be considered a wave 1. The initial correction that unfolds as an ABC would be considered a wave 2. So when we place our analysis on the chart here, we're not looking for a move into our initial target, we're looking for a wave 3 type of swing. Therefore the initial target should be our typical wave 3 WPT, which you can see we have identified in our chart down here. So you'd drag this target down here, and that would be the area where we'd be looking for an initial profit target. So why are these trade setups so good? Well, you can just see here the initial profit at this target is approximated at 5.3R, in other words 5 times greater than the initial risk. Remember, we use correct position sizing to keep our initial risk constant and under control across all our different setups. So with profits as large as this, it means this is a good setup because the profits are much larger than the losses. Also, what I particularly like about these trade setups is we know that the ABC correction is most commonly found in wave 2s. So this is why this Holy Grail trade setup fits in very nicely with our MTPredictor analysis. And as you can see, this is exactly what happened. Again, we were talking about this live in our training webinar yesterday. The market came down to this initial target here for an approximate 5.3R profit. You could have either taken your profit there and said thank you very much, or you could have come down and noticed that our STF was what we call strong, in other words beyond our strength band. Therefore you could have used our ATR stop to run this a little bit further. So you could have actually taken the profit down to that level, where the profit would be approximately 6.8 or almost 7 times greater than the initial risk. A very good trade setup indeed. In our webinar yesterday, we were actually saying that the better trade setup was probably on the YM, because the resistance on the 15-minute chart was a little bit clearer. So let's go and look at the YM. Here it is on a 3-minute chart. There we go. So there's our 15-minute resistance coming in there. Initial decline down would be considered wave 1. Initial correction up here would be considered wave 2. Just as we did with the ES, we place our analysis on here. And again, just as we did with the ES, we're not looking to come out at our typical wave 3 WPT. We're looking to come out at our, or at least our typical wave 3 WPT, where the profit would be approximately 5.2R. As with the ES, what you could have done is looked at the STF down here and seen it was strong, and therefore you could have swapped your ATR stop, which on the YM would have held you short all the way down to approximately that level there. So if you'd been trading the YM, which is the one we suggested yesterday because the 15-minute chart was a little bit clearer, there was a potential profit of 11R here, which is an absolutely massive trade. So turning an initial risk of approximately $340 into a profit of just over 3,800. This is why these Holy Grail trade setups are so good, and in fact they are one of my favourite trade setups in MTPredictor, and it's why MTPredictor was designed in the first place now over 13 years ago, is that because they catch the end of a wave 2 and get you in the direction of a strong wave 3, because a wave 3 is usually the strongest and longest in a completed 5-wave sequence, it gives you the potential for the largest profit for the smallest initial risk. So for me, it's the best trade in the book. If you've been trading this using our trade module, if I just bring the trade module up here, here it is for our MTPredictor RT add-ons for NinjaTrader. As you can see, when you grabbed and dragged your level here, all the information in the trade module is updated straight away for you. So as soon as your setup comes in, you just click the trade button, and then you can place your trade. But the beauty of this is, as you're approaching your typical wave 3 WPT target here, you'll have seen that the STF was strong. It actually was strong from a long way back earlier. What you could have done is clicked on this bar here. If you can see on the right hand side under position status, it says ATR, and what that would have done is swapped to automatically trailing just beyond the ATR stop for you. So as soon as you do that, each time the bar closes, it will calculate the ATR and move your stop down for you. So the stop would just tick, 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 tick down for you, all automatically done for you by the trade module until you eventually stopped out there. So this gives you a very nice way to automatically manage your trades like this using our trade module. Anyway, so a very, very good day for MTPredictor on Friday, and I particularly wanted to do this video because we were talking about these setups live in our training webinar on Friday, and it's important to follow up on trade setups that were actually discussed at the time. And also, I always like to talk about these Holy Grail trade setups because they are my favourite trade setup, and hopefully you can see why, because they represent potentially the largest potential profit for the smallest initial risk, because you're catching a wave 3 type swing, which is the strongest, longest in a completed 5-wave sequence. So hopefully this has been a good example of the Holy Grail, of the MTPredictor Holy Grail trade setup on both the YM, as you can see here on a 3-minute chart and 15-minute chart, and also on the ES as they unfolded on Friday.